It's the morning star drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the morning star drive, you know.
Hey guys, how's it going? It is Tuesday, March 23rd, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. Today, we'll get some coronavirus updates, current news from around the world, the best class ever segment from Sean Jusung McMillan, and looking into the book of 1 Corinthians. All right, guys, Monday is finally over. We're into Tuesday, well into the week. Hope you guys are having an amazing morning. Guys, what's it been like for you? 1 week after 316, a new revival, a new rapture, a new level. And I hope that everyone's kind of thinking about what we can do, especially during this time of this new 70-day prayer condition. I know it's not easy. I know it's not something that everyone can just like really jump into. I know a lot of people too that have kind of lost their rhythm from the pandemic and missing a lot of pre-dawns here and there. You know, it was a difficult time, but just being here is amazing in itself that you survived it. But most importantly, we need to get ourselves back on that horse, get back on track, and make sure that we support each other as much as possible. All right, guys. So this week we're just enjoying this week and thankful that you guys are here in the Morning Star Drive. And I just wanted to keep liking and commenting. I want to hear from you guys and see how you're doing. And especially for this channel, guys, I just want to let you know that it's not a monetized channel, so the liking and comments, well, liking is not as important. It just shows me if you guys really enjoy it or not. And the commenting, I just want to hear what you guys are doing because I don't really care. Like, this is only for members, so I really don't care if the YouTube sends this to other people. It makes no difference to me. So this is just to hear what you guys are doing. But of course, for the other channel, tonight I have another vlog coming out, why I would move to Malaysia. And it's not what you think. It's not like gonna tell you like, oh, like this, you know, Malaysians are this, Malaysians are that. It's nothing like that, right? It's more of I had a crazy experience once again, a good experience in Malaysia. Well, not good. All the other ones I've been rats on my head, you know, like all the just different problems, right? But this was one of my good experiences, and I really, really realized and enjoyed that time more than anything else, right? So it is my vlog coming out tonight, why I would move to Malaysia. Guys, that's the channel where you can comment and like those are the things where it matters even more. Right, so liking and commenting, those on the Espresso with Sky channel is kind of the big one. That's going to support and help me more than anything else. Okay. Also, Sunday edition, we met Eddie Kwan from America. He's a second generation and also the SS Male national leader. So we get a lot of good insight what it's like to be a second gen born into this history, because it's complete. Like when we guys go into the interview, there's no such thing as I listened to the word and my mind was blown because they know everything already, right? It was like this gradual learning and realizing. So it's really interesting to see the insight, what he was thinking also. So hope you guys really enjoy that. So make sure to check out the Sunday edition this week. It's really, really good seeing it from a second gen point of view. All right. So also last night we had the Zoom Bible study. It is posted on Patreon. It will be posted on Patreon today, probably by around 10 a.m. So go ahead, check that out. And that's going to be the second part of Spiritual World. Okay. So on this terrific and amazing Tuesday, let's get this show started with today's featured artist. And we're going to go back to Dio Wings. And last week on 316 has been a week that they've come out with a new single. The single is called The Way to Go. Right. And it's from Sunseem's poem. Awesome producing, great song. I can't wait to see the music video. Hopefully the music video comes out soon too. So go ahead and check that out. That's Dio Wings in Korea with The Way to Go as our feature artist of the day. Then we have Kuma-chang from Japan with the song Fighter. And then last but not least, we'll break it down with Jew star Aiden Verity from New Zealand. And that song is Believe in Me. So guys, as usual, support our member artists everywhere on Spotify, on Apple Music, on YouTube, wherever it is. And just really, really make sure that we support them, especially through our prayers.
지난 날은 모두 잊어요. 그마저도 가치 있게 내 디딘 걸음이었으니 아파 흘렸던 눈물보다 희망으로 기다렸던 빛나는 순간을 기억해. 그려진 기억도 짙어진 추억도 모두 다 빛나는 걸
똑같아 보여도 저마다 사연이 달라 너의 얘기를 들려줘요. 너와 나 갈 길은 끝에서 끝까지 가다가 아니 갈 테면 차라리 아니 떠나만 못하리라.
노래하고 춤추고 아기자기 얘기 나누고
우리 갈 길은 비바람 스치고 눈보라친데도
This is the way to go. It's my way. Go straight up. It's my way. This is the way to go.
이래저래 시끄럽던 모든 말들은 지금 이 순간부턴 더욱 의미 없어졌어. 그대와 나 여기 이곳에 이렇게 함께 있고 그 하나면 충분하니까. 살다 보면 빠져버려 그러다 너도 버려 쓸데없는 건 갖다 버려버려 수실로 머릿속 청소 잘해야지 평소에 한게 있디 한게 더요. This is the way to go.
너와 나 갈 길은 끝에서 끝까지 가다가 아니 갈 테면 차라리 아니 떠나만 못하리라.
노래하고 춤추고 아기자기 얘기 나누고
우리 갈 길은 비바람 스치고 눈보라친데도 This is the way to go. It's my way. Go straight up. It's my way. This is the way to go. 너와 나 갈 길은 처음부터 끝까지 가다가 아니 갈 테면 차라리 아니 떠나만 못하리라.
노래하고 춤추고 아기자기 얘기 나누고 우리 갈 길은 비바람 스치고 눈보라친데도
This is the way to go. It's my way. Go fly up. It's my way. This is the way to go.
この先は自分のためのステージ生きるという最初の1ページ I'm a fighter 心の中で唱えた自分に負けたくないと思えただけど途絶えた行いがないならばまるで燃料切れのライター誰が何と言おうと関係ない一種の判断で決まるリブは大締めるベルト道がアスファルトでも進むウエスト尽くすベスト夢と現実の狭間で揺れ動いてるだけど絶対諦めない戦い続けるため己に打ち勝つまで挑戦し続けるだけどんな壁も突き破れ心に火を灯せ熱くないなら嘘だろ靴底は全て知ってる歩んできた道のりを見据えるいや道のりの身の字もまだ来てねえ諦めるのなら実りもねえ感覚を研ぎ澄ませ今刻め生きるという最高の1ページどんな失敗も恐れなくていい何度転んでも起き上がればいい自分の感情を信じてスタンダップ立ち止まってもソウルまで捨てんな夢と現実の狭間から けられない戦い続けるため己に打ち勝つまで挑戦し続けるだけ中でもぶち壊せ心に火を灯せ自分で選んだ道なら熱くないなら嘘だろそうお前は決して一人じゃないだろう
I've been fighting with the girl in the mirror, but I keep making her cry, 'cause she can't see to the future. No matter how hard she tries, a piece of heaven chipped off and fell to her. But it's so heavy to carry. Some call it a dream or a heartache, 'cause it's so hard to believe in me. How long till I can say I believe in me? How long till I can say I believe in me? How long till I can say I believe in me? How long till I can say I believe in? I've been staring at the girl in that picture. She doesn't know who to be. When people say the world is your oyster, it's not any easier to see. Another day and I'm starting to wonder if I'll ever know what it means. A teary-eyed hustling dreamer, find it so hard to believe in me. How long till I can say I believe in? How long till I can say I believe in? How long till I can say I believe in? How long till I can say I believe in me? Oh, 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 oh.
And that was Justar Aiden Verdi from New Zealand with Believe in Me. Great song. And right before that, Kuma-chung from Japan. Oldie but a goodie, that was Fighter. And of course, feature artist of the day, Diawings from Korea. And this is I guess we call it idol group if you consider it to Korea. What Koreans call these groups. It's a girl group here. And Providence Group, and the song is The Way to Go. Great song, and it's based on the poem from Sunseam. So I hope you guys enjoyed that music. Go ahead and check them out. Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and whatnot. All right? So that means we're going to get into some updates and things going on around the world. Hope you guys can really enjoy this. We'll start off first with the coronavirus updates for today. It's 123.7 million cases, 2.7 million deaths at 2.2%. So mortality rate in the world has gone down 0.01%, which is great news. Top 6 countries going by daily infection rates. We have the U.S. with 30.4 million cases, 554,000 deaths at 1.82%. Brazil, 11.9 million cases, 292,000 deaths at 2.45%. India, 11.6 million cases, 159,000 deaths at 1.37%. France, 4.2 million cases, 92,000 deaths at 2.17%. Italy, 3.3 million cases, 104,000 deaths at 3.11%. Poland, 2 million cases, 49,000 deaths at 2.39%. And then we have Sweden and Belgium. Sweden, the only country not to go into full lockdown at 1.78%, which is still below the US. And of course, Belgium to 2.74%. Daily infection rates, Brazil drops down to 73,000 cases in a day, the US to 55,000. India, 43,000. France comes back into the mix with 35,000 cases. Poland with 26. And Italy rounds up the top 6 daily infection rates with 23,000 cases in a given day. Over here, Southeast Asia, Philippines is just constantly growing. They're up to 7,900 cases in a day. I believe that's a new record high for them for daily infection rates. And then India with 5,600, and then Malaysia at 1,600 cases in a day. So quite interesting what's happening in the Philippines. Of course, I think they found 2 or 3 more different variants of the coronavirus. So that's something to look out for over there in the Philippines. We do have a couple churches there, so let's make sure we keep them in our prayers. So let's get into the top 3 news updates for today. And I talked about this yesterday about the floods happening in New South Wales and Australia. And thousands have now been evacuated as downpours worsen more and more. Already 18,000 Australians have been evacuated from flooding across New South Wales as heavy rain continues to batter the east coast. Days of torrential downpours have caused rivers and dams to overflow around Sydney, the state capital, and in southeast Queensland, right? So yesterday they said it was a 1 in a 100-year event. Officials say now it's about a 1 in a 50-year event, and it may continue all week. And they've urged the public to exercise caution. So the Prime Minister Morrison has offered funds for those forced to flee. And if you think about this, guys, it's another testing time for the country. Widespread damage in the affected areas, which are home to about a third of Australia's 25 million people. And the New South Wales Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, said many of the communities being battered by the floods have been affected by bushfires and drought the previous summer. So this is something that's been constantly going on. And she also said that they don't know any time in state history where they've had such extreme weather conditions in quick succession in the middle of a pandemic, right? So emergency services have conducted at least 500 rescues, including winching people from cars, stranded families lifted from their flooded homes by helicopters. Responders saved a family with an infant from flooding in their home in Sydney's west. So Australia's Bureau of Meteorology has said the rainfall is up to 1,000 millimeters in some areas and has been extraordinary in the recent days. On Monday, authorities were most concerned about residents in the low-lying areas north and west of Sydney, we reported yesterday. But what has happened so far? The flooding has caused havoc across New South Wales, forcing 15,000 evacuations on the state's mid-north coast and a further 3,000 in Sydney. So swollen rivers have cut off roads and bridges and forced about 150 schools to shut down on Monday. There have been images of livestock floating through the flooded areas and rows of houses just engulfed up to their windows. So the rivers in Hawkesbury and Nepean They border Sydney to the north and west, reached higher levels on Monday than during a devastating flood in 1961. So forecasters said the Hawkesbury River could peak at around 13 meters or 42 feet later in the day. So in addition, there was a dam, though we talked about this yesterday too, the Warragamba Dam. The Sydney's main water source has begun spilling over for the first time in 5 years, and authorities said it was discharging about 500 gigaliters a day. It's equivalent to the volume of Sydney of the Sydney Harbour. So on Sunday, a young couple saw their house north of Sydney swept away by flash floods on what should have been their wedding day, right? So shocked neighbors, people are filming the uprooted 3-bedroom cottage bobbing along the Manning River after it burst in its banks, and flights have all been suspended in the Newcastle airport, right? That's just like 10, 15 kilometers north of Sydney. And authorities have also reported landslides and damage to homes from a mini tornado which hit west of Sydney on Saturday. So a total of 18 council areas have been lashed across New South Wales. So how serious is the situation? Well, the Premier said several thousand people in the Hawkesbury and Nepean Valley could face new evacuation orders, more coming, right? And authorities have issued 20 such orders across the state and declared up to 38 local zones as natural disasters. So what they're going through now is kind of been different, right? For the last 50 years. So people, they're kind of warning people to take it really, really seriously. So this is something that we do have to look at, right? As people of this history, we have to understand that these things are not just, we might look at that as coincidence if we're people that are not of God, but some things are God's will and some things are God's judgment, and we have to pray about that. We don't know which one it is yet, but we do know right now at this time, it is a time where God is trying to make people realize, right? So it's crazy because it's a pandemic, and on top of it we have the most intensive successions of like natural disasters, right? Like they're talking about in Australia last year was like fires and drought, right? The intense, the summer was so intense. Rain and floods in Eastern Australia is a stark contrast to a year ago, when the exact same area were scorched by mammoth bushfires and ravaged by a drought. So it is quite interesting to see what's happening over there. Okay, so second thing we're going to go over is what's happening with the coronavirus over in France and Poland. And it looks like they're both increasing lockdown measures as infections surge. So France and Poland have reintroduced partial lockdowns as both countries battle a sharp rise in coronavirus infections in recent weeks. About 21 million people in 16 areas of France, including the capital, Paris, are affected as the country fears a third wave. In Poland, non-essential shops, hotels, cultural, sporting facilities are now closed for 3 weeks, and the country has the highest new daily rate of coronavirus cases since November. And coronavirus cases are also rising exponentially in Germany, and the Chancellor Angela Merkel, warning it is likely that the country will now need to apply an emergency brake and reimpose lockdown measures. And the vaccine rollout across the EU has been hindered by delayed deliveries as well as a suspension in several countries of the use of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine over fears of possible side effects. And meanwhile, demonstrations across coronavirus restrictions have affected several European cities. Amsterdam, police fired water cannons to clear protesters from Museum Square, a frequent venue for unauthorized demonstrations. And online footage showed a police dog handler prodding a woman in the chest with his baton and twice hitting a man who tried to protect her. And in the central Germany city of Kassel, police said they used pepper spray and batons to disperse demonstrators who tried to break through a cordon. And video footage posted on social media showed water cannon also being deployed, right? So basically, the police were tweeting that this is not what a peaceful protest should look like, right? So protesters were also detained during an anti-lockdown protest in Hyde Park, London, and several thousand people gathered to protest against coronavirus restrictions in small Swiss town of Listel near Basel, right? So these are just demonstrations going all over Europe. And guys, we have to think about this. The situation in France and Poland, it's getting worse over there. France is partial lockdown, and that took place last Friday. And trains leaving Paris for parts of the country where lockdown restrictions do not apply, such as other places like Brittany and Lyon, reportedly fully booked hours before the measures were due to come into effect. Traffic jams reported several roads leaving the capital, and the new restrictions are not to be as strict as the previous lockdown, with people allowed to exercise outdoors. So non-essential businesses are shut down, but schools remain open along with hairdressers as they follow a particular sanitary protocol. Yes, it's cool. It reminds me because I just got my hair cut right now before this. And France has reported more than 4.2 million infections since the start of the outbreak, with nearly 92,000 COVID-related deaths, right? And in Poland, 3-week lockdown began on Saturday, and Polish health officials earlier warned the nationwide restrictions were necessary because of a rampant British variant of the coronavirus in the country, and the variant now makes up more than 60% of infections. So Poland has had more than 2 million confirmed infections and nearly 49,000 deaths, according to Johns Hopkins University, right? So Germany, which is a neighbor of Poland, they have now classified Poland as high risk, and that means that from Sunday, anyone crossing the border from Poland must provide a negative coronavirus test. Last but not least, it's very interesting. CDC stats are coming out for what's happening with the coronavirus in America. Just to give you guys an idea of what's happening. So the first question is, what percentage of people have died in America from the coronavirus? And shockingly, most people would say like what? 10%, 15%, whatever it is. However, the percentage of people that have died from the coronavirus because of the population is 0.15%, right? So numbers-wise, it's huge, but the actual number of people dying is 0.15%. And it's interesting because there are deaths that are in dispute still. Because if you look at all of the deaths, only 6% of the deaths were solely from the coronavirus, which means 94% of the deaths had comorbidities, and the average is like 2.6, which is huge, right? That people had an average of 2 to 3 different like life-threatening conditions, right? So, and a lot of people were also talking about how the government gives incentives for COVID deaths, and that's why they're counting more deaths, right? So if we just take a look at the facts itself, hospitals receive reimbursements of $13,000 per person that is diagnosed with coronavirus, right? So that could be an incentive. And then you get an extra $39,000 per patient that is put on a ventilator, right? So it's quite interesting because if a person has coronavirus, in their diagnosis, just in there, whether they're hospitalized for coronavirus or not, the hospital receives $13,000 US per patient, and then an extra $39,000 if a patient is put on a ventilator, right? So it's quite interesting to see, like, that's kind of why people are talking about the deaths could be a little bit inflated. Possibly, we're not sure, right? So far, you have 124 million vaccines that are administered, and people that are fully, like, have the full 2 shots, about 44 million people, which is about 12% of the population, has received the vaccine, and at least 81 million people have received one, right? So that's why you have the 124 million, because 44 is fully vaccinated and 81 is at least one vaccination. Interesting. If we look at coronavirus deaths by age, 96% of all deaths is over 50 years old, right? So, you're looking, if you're under 50, you have a 4%, like 4% of the deaths are coming from under 50. And if you guys want to make a guess, if you're under 18 years old, I'm not going to give you a percentage because the percentage is so low. How many people have died from the coronavirus over the last year that's under 18 years old? And the answer is, the latest up-to-date on the CDC website is 333. So you see how small it is. They're basically immune to the coronavirus. Only 333 deaths for the entire over a year of coronavirus going on. Only 333 have been under 18, and that's why there's this big uproar for, hey guys, let's open up the schools. These kids are not, going through, they're not really susceptible to this coronavirus kind of thing. And interestingly, 54% of all deaths in America are male, and it's actually much, much lower than it was before. I believe it was over 60% at one point, but it's kind of evening out now that 54% of the deaths are male. So that's kind of interesting statistics coming from the CDC in America. Okay, so that is today's interesting news for today. Hope it, guys, kind of opens our eyes to see what God is doing in Australia, in Europe, right, in America. A lot of different things happening, and it kind of opens our eyes to what we're really dealing with. Okay, so Now that we're done with all the news for today, we're going to go into a time of praise and worship and hope that all of us here can enjoy this together. We're going to start things off with a bang with "The Lord is my hope and joy," and then into "Only This Remains," and we'll end it off with "Holding You in My Embrace." So as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let us really spend this time together giving glory to the Holy Trinity. So let's give glory.
Life without the Lord, how could we live? No one could live like that. Without fun, without hope, oh, what kind of life is that? Since the Lord is my hope and joy, I'll always follow. The Lord is my pride. Here's the source of my confidence. I think of Him everywhere that I go, hoping I can tell someone, tell them of my Lord, boast about Him to everyone I see. I'll tell them all those stories of His life, endless stories about Him. Anyone who hears me will be completely blown away, astonished and amazed, because I am His bride, I am His beloved, because I'm His bride, the one He loves, because I'm His joy and His sunshine. My face glows with love. Everyone who sees me will wonder why they want to know more. But how can they know Him? Secrets of the times and of the Lord they'll not know, but remain in ignorance until they are told they will not know at all. As one who knows, I will surely tell the world, tell them the truth, testify for Him, then they will My Lord once spoke to me, to my heart. My love, testify to all of the world. Please, love, testify for me. Then the Lord God will be with you, speaking through your lips every day. You will be moved by
The Lord has chosen me, He's given me all things. He's taught me with His love and He has led me. The time arrived, He brought me to the bright golden city, and there we have fulfilled the greatest love. So now I will live just to love Him. I will give all my heart and life. I'll call His name and seek Him every day. I will sing and I'll praise Him. I will dance 'cause I love Him. I will share love with Him daily, having rapture. And I'll always offer glory in my life, for only this remains. There's nothing else for me, as I've received all things. So I will offer everything before my King. I'll always love the Lord, and I'll converse with Him daily, and so I shall repay His greatest grace. So now I will live just to love Him. I will give all my heart and life. I'll call His name and seek Him every day. I will sing and I'll praise Him. I will dance 'cause I love Him. I will share love with Him daily, having raptured. And I'll always offer glory in my life, for only this remains. So now I will live just to love Him. I will give all my heart and life. I'll call His name and seek Him every day. I will sing and I'll praise Him. I will dance 'cause I love Him. I will share love with Him daily, having raptured. And I'll always offer glory in my life, for only this remains. So now I will live just to love Him. I will give all my heart and life. I'll fulfill the missions that He's given me. I will preach with His shame joy. Yes, I'll testify for Him. I will share life with Him daily, having raptured. And I'll always offer glory in my life, for only this remains. For only this remains. For only this remains. For only this remains. For only this remains.
It's a path you chose to walk for me. Now I understand the love you have for me. Your love has saved me. I am truly thankful. Lord, I walk along this path with you. It's a path of everlasting joy. I will love you, Lord, and I will never change. And here in Providence, I'll fulfill the rapture. In my soul, I go to meet you and confess how much I want to be here by your side forevermore. Please accept my love, although it falls so short. For my love is true, it lasts eternally. Holding you so tightly in my arms. Can you feel my love for you, Lord? Know that I cannot live without you. I will comfort your heart, my Lord, holding you in my embrace. With a smile, I'm reaching out for you. Full of hope, I'll hold your hand in mine, and I will not let go. I'll never part from you. 1,000 years may pass, but I'll never leave you. Through the day, I live while praying for you, Lord. I always pray and only think of you again today. Please receive the power of my earnest heart. Though I'm incomplete, please accept my heart. Holding you so tightly in my arms. Can you feel my love for you, Lord? Know that I cannot live without you. I will comfort your heart, my Lord, holding you in my embrace. Holding you so tightly in my arms. Now I know what's in your heart, so I will fulfill the will of rapture. I will always give you my love, holding you in my embrace.
And that was Holding You in My Embrace. Holding you in my embrace. Yeah. I love that ending part. Either way, before that was Only This Remains and The Lord Is My Hope and Joy. Hope you guys really enjoy this time of praise and worship, or even just listening to worship songs. And it could be something that we really need to think about even more for the future, that this is an everyday thing we could do. Remember what Sunseem said? I think he said like 2 months ago, he said, the pandemic destroyed businesses and stopped us from doing so many things. But it is not, that was one thing that could not stop us from praising God. And it's something that we should be doing regardless of the situation. So I hope that it is something that we can do for a long time. All right, so let's get into today's word study. And of course, it's Tuesday, which means we're going to go into the book, right? The book where the scriptures are, and we're going to go into the book of Corinthians, right? So I'm going to give you some background information on what's happening during this time so you guys get a better idea, okay? So Let's take a look at First Corinthians. Now, one thing we need to know is that Paul was intimately involved with the church in Corinth, and he was one of the people that led in the establishment of the church, and he kept close ties, in close touch with it, and was writing in the face of certain pressing needs that the church was needing. So a thorough knowledge of the circumstances which preceded and called forth this book is essential to its interpretation, to know what was going on, okay? So first, let's take a look at the city of Corinth, okay? Now, ancient Corinth, right, they headed something called the Achaean League during the Hellenistic period, right? So before the Roman period was the Hellenistic or the Greek period, and the ancient Corinth was headed, leading the Achaean League. But this city was also completely destroyed by the Romans in 146 BC, and then a century passed before it was finally rebuilt. And it was most likely rebuilt under the direction of Julius Caesar. And the city lay on this narrow strip of land between two bodies of water, which was the Corinthian Gulf and the Saronic Gulf. And this strategic location ensured commercial prosperity, because remember, everything in the past was done through the water, right? Like boats were carrying cargo, so merchant seamen preferred to send their cargoes across this narrow strip, making the long and perilous journey around you had the choice. You had to go through that one part there, or you go through this long journey around the tip of Greece. So smaller ships were also able to be taken across the land, right? They had the ship tramway with wooden rails. And of course, larger ships couldn't be handled in the same manner, but they were unloaded and then transferred to other ships across that small, thin strip of land. And the new city was a Roman colony, and its inhabitants were Romans, both veterans and freedmen, and Greeks had been slow to return. But by the time of Paul's contact with the city, there was many Jews in large numbers, so much that they had to make a synagogue, right? So commercial prosperity attracted Orientals in considerable numbers, and the city was truly cosmopolitan. Like I said before, enough Jews were present to justify to build a synagogue. And some people would even describe the city as somewhat like a Chicago, Paris, a port city. And they said they can't really figure out the exact population during that time, but they say that it could be anywhere from 100 to 600,000 people. So it's a rough estimate. And the city was basically teeming with permanent residents of many nationalities, very diverse. And there were always large numbers of sailors and merchants from all over the Roman Empire because it was like a port city. And Corinth never became like an intellectual center, kind of like Athens. It never became like that. But it had its own distinguishing characteristics. Like, for instance, they have like something called the Isthmian Games, right? It's like Olympics, right? But it's conducted every 2 years. Athletes from distant parts were attracted to these games, which were conducted even during the century that the city was in ruins. So that's how important those games were. And Corinth was strategically located, and it was the hub. Basically, from there, you can go to any direction. So any movement which gained a footing here could be assured of a hearing in surrounding districts. So they said, describe this important city as not an intellectual city, but intellectually alert, materially prosperous, and also morally corrupt. Okay, so that's kind of what the city was like back then. Now, what was the atmosphere for when Paul, when they're setting up a church there? Like when the church existed, what was the atmosphere? So the church will inevitably reflect, to some extent, the society in which it exists, right? So this reflection is not going to be in direct proportion, but the redemptive fellowship known as a New Testament church possesses a dimension unknown to the world. It's kind of like, most people didn't know what kind of church this really was. It was brand new, right? So the church didn't conform to its environment, but those who were the redeemed ones who comprise of this church are taken from the world, whose influence is usually very evil. Like that's what, it says morally corrupt. And the influence continues to be felt after conversion, right? So it's kind of like what we're going through right now, like in the world, is people can easily be corrupted by what's going on around the world. So the church in Corinth existed in a grossly sinful atmosphere, which continued to make its mark on the church. And many of the problems of the church found their basis from life in the city. Okay, so it's almost like, when you look at today with like little like SS kids that are always playing video games. It's kind of something from the world that we're trying to escape, and that's the problems that we're dealing with. A little bit different than the past, and probably the most significant of the factors which comprise the atmosphere of Corinth was like gross, unashamed immorality, right? So both the old city and the Roman colony were known far and wide for sexual looseness, right? So the most prominent site was something called the Acrocorinth. It's a sharp projection which rose to a height of 1,800 feet. And on the summit of the steep mountain stood the temple of Aphrodite, a symbol of the lust which pervaded the mind of the city. So the worship of this goddess, it's not Greek in origin, but it's more Oriental, and it had been imported from the Phoenician cult of Astarte. And in Old Corinth, the temple maintained 1,000 priestesses who amounted to no more than common prostitutes, right? And it's not certain that the 1,000 priestesses were maintained in the temple of rebuilt Corinth. Nevertheless, the gross immorality continued as before, and the attitude of the city toward immorality involved no condemnation whatsoever. On the contrary, it was considered to be a normal part of life to do those things like sexual immorality, and the same loose attitude was often reflected in the church. So the case of incest and the question about the Christian view of marriage had their roots in the immoral mind of the city, right? That's why these things all came about. And most of the members of the church were Gentiles, and the strict morality characteristic of the Jews was foreign to them, right? They're not used to it. And that's what Sunstein talks about too, is a lot of times Providence seems too strict or whatever it is because people are so far off, right? And they found it difficult to understand that what they once considered virtue was now a sin, right? And we hear that a lot, like, why is this sin? Why is this sin? And people always complain about these different things they don't understand, right? So idolatry is another feature of the city, which was closely linked to its immorality. And in addition to the temple of Aphrodite, there were numerous others, and the worship in these temples was popular among the residents. Okay, so these idol temples played a significant role in both economic and social life, and the economic factor arose from the practice of sacrificing animals to the idols, and some of the meat sacrificed was consumed in the sacrifice, and some of it was eaten by the priests, and some of it was sold in the markets of the city. So accurate identification of this meat was kind of impossible to know exactly what it was, and also a customer who buys it from the market would have no way of knowing whether this meat had come from the altar of some pagan temple, right? So when a citizen went to dine with a friend, there's no way of knowing whether the meat served him had come from the worship of an idol. There's just no way of knowing. So the church in Corinth had a great problem at this point, and some felt that there was no harm whatever in eating meat that had been sacrificed to idols, while others felt that they were participating in idolatry when they were eating it, right? So on the more distinctly social side, there was the problem of whether to attend feasts given in the idol temples, and these feasts were outstanding social events, and many of the converted Gentiles continued to receive invitations. So could they in good faith attend on the assurance that an idol was nothing and that they were simply maintaining normal social intercourse? And these problems were acute for the Corinthian converts, and Paul's answers continue to be helpful today for the Christians who are struggling with some questionable practice, right? So in the church, there were some factions in the Church of Corinth, and you'll explain by the very factious spirit of the city. So the population consisted of Romans, Greeks, and Orientals, and men of adventure from all over. When I say Orientals, I guess I could just say Asians now more than anything else, right? And the absence of an established aristocracy tended to make the people democratic and intolerant of control. So this independent spirit carried over into the church, like no one has that much power, and there was displayed the tendency for each member to line up behind his favorite leader in competition with all others. And this factious spirit was also revealed in the attempt of women to be independent as possible in the congregation, and in the insistence of those with spiritual gifts on displaying them publicly without regard to the edification of the church. And of course, we're talking about like just speaking in tongues. What good is it if if no one can interpret it, right? So it's very interesting. There's little direct reflection in 1 Corinthians to like the more of the Asian mystery religions, right? But these religious societies provided the it's kind of like they had close fellowship, right? And of course, this religious societies, like whether it's the New Testament church or other religions, they provided close fellowship, forgiveness of sins, personal salvation that were promised, and the longing which these mystery religions filled was an indication of the spiritual hunger of the time. So just the fact that there were many other religions promising these things and people were joining them, there was a hunger for it. So the official worship was no longer satisfying and something more personal was being sought after. And especially popular among these mysteries was the Isis cult, not Isis that we know today, one which extended religious equality to women, which is very interesting because that's what, it's a big issue today. And one of the problems of idolatry involved the question of a Christian's attendance at the religious meals of like other idols, right? So Corinth, like I said, was one of the most prosperous cities in all of Greece and a trading center. It ranked with Ephesus and Antioch, and commerce flowed in every direction, and there were abundant signs of wealth. However, not everyone shared in this wealth, and there was a great gulf between the rich and the poor. Slaves and freemen were both present in large numbers, and the church in Corinth reflected the population of the city, right? So that is it's very, very interesting. Right. And I would say if there's anything else that was really, really interesting about that time was another factor for the atmosphere of Corinth was actually the intellectual climate. Right. So there is difficulty involved in classifying this climate because it consisted of many diverse elements. Right. So there's kind of like this gross amalgamation of like Roman, Greek, and Oriental life. And like this Corinth was like kind of the least Greek of the Roman colonies. And it was not in an intellectual center like Athens, but the Greek mind was still felt in Corinth and in Athens. Paul had been ridiculed because of his preaching of the resurrection, and the Greeks considered matter like evil and spirit good, right? So consequently, they held that a resurrection of the body was repugnant, right? Because the physical is bad and the spiritual is better, right? So Corinth retained enough of this Greek outlook to view the doctrines of the resurrection and the potential goodness of the body during this life with suspicion, right? So that is quite interesting. That's kind of what the background is with the church over there. So I hope this background kind of gives you an idea of where this story or where the letter comes from and why it's not all of Rome that was like that, but especially in Corinth, it was particularly a lot of idolatry and sexual looseness that was considered like normal for everyone. Like if you think about it, the Temple of Athens had like, of Aphrodite, the temple had 1,000 priestesses and they're basically like prostitutes. Either way. Okay, so that is kind of what's going on over there in Corinth, and that's kind of the background situation of what we see there. All right, guys? All right, so that means we're going to go into a time of the song choice of the day. And yesterday, I don't know why this week I was thinking a lot about these old Korean pop idol songs like from the past, and I'm gonna go to the very first, okay? And this was the first K-pop band to kind of make it big international. They considered this the first K-pop idol group from 1996, SM Entertainment, and this group is called HOT, which is High Five of Teenagers, and their first hit song was called Candy. A lot of you might have heard this that are a lot younger, a lot older, and they had like these, I believe they had four or five, I think it was 5 members, and some of them came from the States, but it was like the first idol group, right? This album, so they sold over 6.4 million records just in South Korea alone during their career. Commercially successful in China and Japan too, and they were the first stars of the Korean wave of Asia, right? And some of you might know one of them, his name is Kangta, and he was like the most famous of them, the really like girly looking guy. And the group eventually broke up 5 years later, 2001, because of a contract disagreement. And then of course they had so many fans that because of that contract dispute, fans were staging like protests against the company, as crazy as that sounds, right? So this is it. First K-pop idol group. Is really, really funny because I know they did a performance in our Christian church before too. This is HOT with Candy.
몰래 다른 여자들과 비교해 시작구만 헤어지는 어차피 혼자서 울고 졸하게 가져버린 나를 보았어 널 떠날 거야 널 떠날 거야
하지만 아직까지 사랑하는 걸 그래 그렇지만 내 맘속에 너를 잊어갈 거야 머리 위로 비친 내 하늘 바라다보면 널 향한 마음을 이제는 굳혔지만 웬일인지 내게 다가갈수록 우린 같은 하늘 아래 서 있었지 단지 널 사랑해 이렇게 말했지 이젠 준비했던 많은 말을 뒤로한 채 언제나 네 옆에 있을게 이렇게 약속을 하겠어 저 하늘을 바라다 보며 Hit me!
Wine, dine up on the rubber double line. Cause it's a little bit when you have a friend of mine. Bubble in a frock, boom shot the top.
내게 하늘려 있어 그래 너는 내 앞에 서 있고 그래 다른 연인들은 키스를 해 하지만 항상 너의 뒤에 있어야만 해 이제 그만해 나도 남자인데 내 마음 너무 알고 있는 거 알아 그래 이제 나도 지쳐서 하늘만 바라볼 수밖에
햇살에 일어나 보니 너무나 눈부셔 모든 게 다 변한 거야 널 향한 마음도 그렇지만 널 사랑하는 게 아냐 이제는 나를 변화시킬 테니까 머리 위로 비친 내 하늘 바라다보며 널 향한 마음을 이제는 굳혔지만 웬일인지 내게 다가갈수록 우린 같은 하늘 아래 서 있었지 단지 널 사랑해 이렇게 말했지 이제껏 준비했던 많은 말을 이루한 채 언제나 네 옆에 있을게 이렇게 약속을 하겠어 저 하늘을 바라보며 한 번 더 말했지 이제껏
그래도 많은 말을 뒤로한 채 다시 널 사랑한다고
뒤로한 채 언제나 네 옆에 있을게 다시 너 혼자 아냐 너의 곁에 내가 있잖아
Yes, guys, does that sound like K-pop-ish as K-pop can be? That is H.O.T. High Five of Teenagers with Candy. Hope you guys enjoyed that. It's way back in 96 when the first K-pop idol group came out. So, yeah, that's where everything comes from, guys. As interesting as that sounds. All right, so that means we're going to go into today's last section. Of course, it is Tuesday, so we're going to get into what? Today is Best Class Ever with Sean Jusung McMillan. So let's enjoy and welcome Jusung.
I love to write things down, especially the things that I want to remember, but don't always want to deal with at the moment. I feel especially proud of myself when I make to-do lists. But how many of us feel good about those same to-do lists when we see them again later in the day or revisit them the next day? My name is Sean Jung-Ju-Sung McMillan, and this is the Best Class Ever. All of us have things we need to do but are avoiding, things that we want to do but are not really priority, and things we would like to avoid altogether. I spoke about this a couple lessons ago in an episode titled How to Get Critical Work Done, the Eisenhower Decision Matrix. But the point of all this is to both get stuff done and to feel good about it afterwards. While keeping a to-do list may help to get things done, it doesn't make us feel good about it afterwards. So how can we redesign this process to create more positive results? I recently listened to an interview of Marina Nietzsche on a podcast titled People I Mostly Admire. She is a business process consultant and was one of the youngest people ever hired to a chief position in the US government at the age of 27. She knows how to get things done. She realized that we often take on easy tasks when we have the most energy and postpone difficult tasks without tackling them until we are low on energy or motivation. This is terrible because if we fail to get that task done and postpone it even further, the task only induces that much more anxiety the next time we approach it. Do not let a task turn into a monster. To solve this problem, Marina labels her tasks as either high energy, low energy, or leisure tasks, depending on which mode she should be in when she tackles it. She makes sure to do high priority tasks that require a lot of energy and serious cognitive ability during the time of day when she is at her optimum performance. You know, like most of us after we've had plenty of rest and a good cup of caffeine. That is not the time to do easy, mindless tasks like laundry, which requires no creative thinking or patience. That is the time to tackle creative projects or tasks that require a lot of patience and grit. For me, writing and creating original art requires me to have a lot of energy and to be in a really good mood. Someone once asked a famous author, "Do you write at the same time every day, like a job, or do you write when you feel like it, when you feel inspired?" And he responded, "I only write when I feel inspired." Luckily for me, inspiration strikes every morning when I sit down to write at 9 a.m. I mentioned this in the previous lesson, but it bears repeating. If you have creative work that you hope to accomplish, don't just put it on a to-do list. Do not just give yourself a reminder. All a reminder will do is remind you how you are failing to make progress and give you another opportunity to actively postpone the task again, spiraling you into a feedback loop of repeated disappointment. Instead of a reminder, you need to schedule a block of time to work on it. And try to schedule it during a time when you have enough energy and will be in a good enough mood to feel like doing it. If that time comes and you still don't feel like doing it, that's okay. But do not do anything else at that time. Just sit and do nothing. Turn off your phone, remove all distraction. Just be alone with your thoughts. Be bored. Come up with a simple plan for dealing with anything that might be blocking you and schedule another time to deal with those obstacles. Then you can consider this in itself as progress and go on to doing something else without feeling guilty. What we are really dealing with here is guilt. The guilt we feel for not making progress. The guilt we feel for procrastinating. The problem with a to-do list is that even if you work on a task, there are a lot of times when for one reason or another you do not perfectly complete the task. So now, even though you have made progress, you do not get the satisfaction of removing it from your task list. In fact, you could work really hard and feel like there is nothing to show for it afterwards. It is simply a poorly designed solution. We need the satisfaction of feeling like we did a good job. Even if we did not complete the task, we should still feel positively about the concrete progress that we have made. Now, I admit that different people have different personality types or different temperaments. Not all of us love to be organized and on time all of the time. All of us need various degrees of spontaneity in our lives. Some of you, I know, really don't like to feel trapped by a schedule. Now, I will admit I have become one of those extremely organized administrative personality types who love spreadsheets and are always on time. For those of you who are more spontaneous and often late, you should know the rest of us who are always on time hate waiting for you when you are late. We count every minute that you are not there, and we multiply it by each person who showed up on time and also had to wait for you. But we forgive you because your spontaneity brings much needed life to the party. As for me, I was not a very organized person when I was younger, but once I got into animation school, I became very competitive. I wanted to be the best illustrator in my class, so I began to organize my life and production routines despite my natural temperament. What I found was that keeping a strict schedule was far more liberating. Having no structure to my day meant that every time I finished something or got tired, I had to deal with choosing my next task at a time when I really did not feel like making choices. There were times when I would wander the hallways of the school trying to think of what I should do next. Should I eat now or later? Should I keep working on my high priority project or take a break? I would pace back and forth in a state of analysis paralysis. Friends would see me and ask, "Hey Sean, are you okay? You look lost." I kind of knew what I needed to do, but I often didn't feel like doing it right then. So then I would do less significant tasks, knowing all the while that the truly important tasks were still waiting to be done, haunting me, weighing down on my conscience. Each time I postponed them, I felt like a failure. Even if I worked and made a lot of progress, I felt guilty at the end of the day because I didn't know if I had really spent my day optimally or not. At the end of the day, I spent my time leisurely to escape my guilt and then felt guilty about that. Now, instead of feeling guilty about spending time leisurely, I actually plan my day and even make time in my schedule for fun leisurely activities. I cannot tell you how liberating it is to walk away from a task once your time allotted for it is up. I can keep working on it if I feel like it, or move on to the next schedule if I want. I still have the freedom to choose according to how I feel, but now it's a simple choice between keep going or move on to the next schedule, not an overwhelming list of options to choose from. The biggest to-do list I keep now is a list of books, movies, TV shows, or games that friends have recommended to me. To-do lists are not all evil. They do help you to remember things you would otherwise forget. I especially like to write down insignificant little inspirations that I don't want to spend much time on, like items I need to purchase later when I'm shopping, or small requests that roommates or loved ones have made that I could easily forget. This is what lists are good for, small, insignificant things. But for the significant tasks in our life, let's use the schedule. Schedule out the ideal day you would like to have. Nothing is set in stone. You can change the schedule according to your feeling and mood as you go throughout your day. And you can even use colors to mark which ones are priority and which ones are not. This categorization is extremely helpful. In fact, if you are going to keep a to-do list of significant tasks or start with a list before transferring these tasks to your schedule, don't forget to reorder your list. Write the list as each item comes to mind, but never forget to reorder the list according to priority. Mark absolutely have to be done tasks with red or exclamation marks. Move them to the top of the list. If you address these at some point in the day, boom, you are a success. Even if you ignore the rest of the list, you don't need to feel guilty, and you should reward yourself with some good old fun time. In fact, you can even schedule times for fun or rest. The first time you try this, you may be surprised how freeing it is to add structure to your daily life. The old you may often have found it terribly disappointing to leave important tasks undone, and then give up resorting to meaningless leisure activities. The new you will see that actually it is time to have some fun, and you know that you did in fact spend significant time today making concrete progress towards your responsibilities earlier in the day, even if you were not able to completely knock the task off your list. So now you can happily enjoy your leisure time as a reward for good behavior. You have earned it. The old you and the new you are doing almost exactly the same behavior, but the new you feels good about it instead of feeling guilty. For the truly ambitious, you can also optimize your leisure time. Instead of just relying on algorithms to feed you random suggestions, look at the list that you have been keeping of good books, videos, and series that friends and acquaintances have recommended. Reorder the list according to which recommendations will positively inspire you to make progress towards your goal. Because one of the keys to working hard is resting well. For links to the lessons and podcasts mentioned in this episode, feel free to visit me at www.bestclassever.org.
And thank you so much, Jusung, for another awesome episode of Best Class Ever. Hope you guys really enjoyed that, which means that was the last segment for today's podcast. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. Have an amazing Tuesday, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly, so let's realign. Just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive, you know. I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm